I will get over it.
Kia ora. My name's Kimmy and I talk F1 in the world's second worst accent, and these are my 3 conclusions following the 2025 Austrian Grand Prix. No, I'm not going to talk about Williams, I did that last week. So, Sauber then. Sauber's out there proving that when you get things right operationally, you don't necessarily have to have the quickest car to make significant gains come race day. Now, this is the second time in 3 races that Hülkenberg has made up 11 places in the race, and the third in a row where he's finished in the points with a starting position that's out of them. And of course, this is absolutely in part thanks to Sauber's new floor upgrade that significantly improved their race pace and also given them the ability to bang out a solid qualifying lap that's at least putting them somewhere in the midfield. But the biggest contributor to Sauber's success these past few races is, first of all, their commitment to getting their pit stops absolutely bang on, which isn't just about pit stop speed, but also about discipline. And second, their commitment to taking risks with their strategy when they're confident they can play into the strengths of both their cars and their drivers. Now sure, they've benefited from races of attrition, and on Saturday the yellow flag was certainly a factor because Max Verstappen's aborted lap meant he took the opportunity to give Gabriel Bortoleto a bit of a tow, but when these opportunities arise, Sauber is now in a position where they're capable of executing a perfect race relative to where the car is and are able to snatch every point that's on the table and actually available to them. Sauber's basically taken Williams' place in the midfield battle against Racing Bulls, and unless Williams figures out what's causing their various overheating issues, I wouldn't be surprised if they stay there. Now, speaking of Racing Bulls, my second conclusion is that Liam Lawson is a very, very lucky guy whose seat might have just been saved by an incident that could have just as easily ended his race. Austria marked the point in the 2025 season where Liam Lawson demonstrated that he might finally be getting over the misery that was the beginning of the year. And on a weekend where Arvid Lindblad was involved in major incidents in both the F2 sprint and feature races, this 6th place couldn't have come at a better time. Yuki Tsunoda had an absolute mare, Isaac Hadjar was kind of nowhere, Max Verstappen got T-boned in the 3rd corner, meanwhile Lawson somehow managed to escape what looked like certain doom when he got stuck in the middle of all that, had a mercifully clean race, even though he had Fernando Alonso on his tail for the vast majority of it, and might just have kept himself on the fringes of the conversation for one of Red Bull's 4 seats next year. His position was obviously boosted by the double DNF. Max would have most certainly have finished ahead, he would have just been let past, and with both Mercedes out there on track and with more strategic options, it's entirely possible that Antonelli would have also overtaken him. But if I'm going to praise Sauber for taking every opportunity for points, then I have to do the same for my compatriot, unfortunately. And unfortunately for Yuki, his weekends are starting to look just as messy as Checo's were toward the end of his tenure in Red Bull's 2nd seat, which sucks. Not only because Yuki deserves a seat in F1 and regular repeats of this are exactly the kind of performances that Red Bull will use to send him off into the great F1 driver purgatory that is reserve seat somewhere or out of the series entirely, but also because a lot of us saw it coming, the career killer, and it's specifically why a lot of people didn't want Yuki to go to Red Bull. So well done to Liam for keeping his nose clean, not getting into another incident with Fernando, and here's hoping that you can keep it up for at least a few races and keep your 2026 chances alive. And you know what you can help keep alive? This channel. Terrible segue, I know. If you're enjoying this video, please do me a favour and click the subscribe and the like button. Small things help small channels. If you'd like to subscribe to my Patreon, then it's down in the description and right here on screen. And as always, a huge thanks to those of you who support me over there. You rock. Now, obviously the grand finale has to be McLaren. Now I know, everyone's talking about how Oscar's rather sheepish apology at the end of the race showed that McLaren has finally demonstrated how far its drivers are allowed to go in the pursuit of victory and drawn a pretty firm line. And I disagree. I think that Oscar's decision to apologise publicly over the radio at a point where he knew that radio message would be prioritised by the TV direction team shows a driver who's making a point about the level of control McLaren leadership is exerting over its drivers. Now you could argue that this is fair, that at the end of the day they're employed to do a job and they need to follow the instructions of the bosses. And you'd be right. This is a team sport and it's a business after all. While the personal goal may be to win for yourself, the team's goal doesn't always align with that, and it's fair for a contract to have certain disciplinary measures in place if you fail to abide by the rules of engagement. But the problem I have with McLaren is that the way they go about these things. I've said it before, and I still feel the same way. McLaren feels, from the outside at least, incredibly passive-aggressive in how it manages its driver dynamic. And the way their race engineers manage the individual feels deeply patronising, particularly how Will Joseph chooses to speak to Lando Norris over the radio. Now, this could absolutely be a choice on Lando's part for sure, but he's young and he's been in that seat since he was a literal teenager. That's plenty of time to be indoctrinated into thinking something kind of not okay is completely normal. Now, the way McLaren communicates over team radio has a lot of similarities with how managers speak to employees in toxic work environments, particularly when they're trying to blame the employee for the failures of the business itself without outright stating it. You've all probably experienced it, it's pretty unfun. And it's kind of easy to be convinced that you are actually the problem if you allow it to go on for too long. We all know what it is, and it starts with a G. It's the kind of subtle blame culture that can work in the short term, but in the long term it can cause major issues. And while Oscar and Lando seem to be getting along fine despite the on-track battles, McLaren doesn't feel like it's changed its communication style even after all the criticism they received after Hungary last year. If anything, Oscar's pointed apology after the checkered flag felt almost like someone telling the world, "Yep, I tried. It was slightly over the line. I'm demonstrating that I'm appropriately ashamed, and my decision to go a little bit long was so I didn't get caught up in a repeat battle." It's probably not what he meant, but it's what it felt like. It feels like he's protecting himself against some kind of retaliation, not necessarily from Lando, but from the team itself. And that just gives me the ick, man. What can I say? So much about how I feel about those involved in Formula One is entirely based on the completely unscientific and vibes-based binary scale of ick. 1 or 0. I either get the ick or I don't. So while I am absolutely invested in this McLaren title battle, I think I'm even more invested in watching and listening closely to try to understand exactly how they're managing things behind the scenes. So, what did you learn this weekend? Are you disappointed, like me, that Max and George are probably out of this title fight now? Do you think somebody's placed a curse on Grove and Williams needs to burn some sage before their cars burn their drivers? And did you hear about the gossip about Valtteri Bottas being a top pick for Alpine next year? And are you also begging him not to do that to himself? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and to my patrons, and I hope to see you here again next time.